Hello, it's Rachel Walker here from Don Catchment Rivers Trust, speaking to you from Goole. In our last 5-minute history, we talked about Cornelius Vermuyden's grand drainage scheme in the 1600s and how it totally changed the layout of the rivers in the catchment. In this 5-minute history, I thought I'd talk about the next big driver of change, and that's how the waterways of the Don were adapted for boats. After Vermuyden completed his drainage scheme, this is how the catchment around Goole looked. The link with the River Trent was lost, so the only ways into the system were either via the Aire or along the Dutch River, but that was only ever really built as a drain, not as a navigation. Even then, boats could only reach Doncaster, and that was with a small boat on a big tide. After the drainage scheme, the Industrial Revolution would begin, and people would need to start moving goods around the country. Usually Fish Lake was the farthest you could get on a boat regularly. It was the Cutlers of Sheffield that first managed to get an Act of Parliament to improve the rivers for navigation in 1726. This was hard fought, because even if a tide could get you to Doncaster, because the Don had never been navigable beyond that, the river was used for water power up to Sheffield. It was full of weirs that diverted water to the water wheels that power mills and works. Water was a very precious commodity, and there was no way the mill owners were going to allow any alterations that took their most important resource and source of power away. But the River Don Navigation Company persevered, and over the years managed to straighten out sections and bypass the weirs by installing locks. Eventually, in 1752, boats could reach Tinsley, just on the outside of Sheffield. These are the sorts of boats that were trading along the Don at the time. They were called keels if they had a square sail, or a sloop if they had a triangular sail. They were flat-bottomed, so they could rest on the Humber sandbanks if the tide was too low, and capable of sailing round the coast, into the Humber, and all the way to Sheffield. This led to a local tradition of calling a boat Sheffield-sized. Keels were all different sizes, but if you wanted to get to Sheffield, the dimensions had to be no bigger than 61 foot 6 inches long, 15 foot 6 inches wide, and 7 foot 6 inches deep, because that's the size of the smallest lock. They carried all sorts of goods, but mostly things like wheat and coal. This system worked fine, but it was still tidal up to Doncaster. Now, though, we were approaching the Canal Age in Britain. Remember that the catchment lost its link to the River Trent in the 1600s? Well, in 1802 the link was re-established when the Stainforth and Keighley Canal was dug. That more or less put the short section from the Aire out of use, because why would you sail all the way around to a small tidal inland river when you could pen through a lock and be on a purpose-built canal leading straight to the Don? In 1804 the Dearne and Dove Canal joined to Barnsley, and 1819 the Sheffield Canal linked Tinsley to Victoria Quays in the middle of Sheffield. Then, in 1826 the Aire and Calder navigation opened. This cut off the link with the Aire once and for all. But even though the entrance to the Aire and Calder navigation is right next to the River Don, via Goole Docks, there was no link to the Don catchment until the new Junction Canal was built in 1905. That's when these boats, Tom Pudding tugs, were able to motor to the South Yorkshire coal pits and pick up coal to be delivered to Goole Docks. Tom Puddings aren't used anymore, but some of the tugs can still be seen in the local area. There is only one commercial barge left on the Don now, Exall Pride, a tanker barge which takes oil between Hull and Rotherham. There are still some of the traditional keels and sloops about, and while many of them switched from sail to motors around the Second World War, people passionate about traditional barges have restored some to their former sailing glory.